Welcome to Baltic Landlords, an international broadcast about real estate development, property management, and income sustainability. I'm your host, David Svet, and my guest today is Aleksandrs Mežapuķe, country manager at Estate Guru. Aleksandr, welcome to Baltic Landlords.
Hello, thank you for inviting.
What is Estate Guru?
Estate Guru is a crowdfunding platform for real estate-backed loans, working in, I think, already 8 countries. So the company headquarters are in Estonia, and we are now operating in all of the Baltic states, Finland, Germany, starting in the UK market soon, and growing all around Europe.
Could you elaborate more about the alternative way of property financing? What exactly is crowdfunding?
So the crowdfunding is a tool which allows, say, investors, large number of investors, to invest in one project. That could be real estate, that could be loans, that could be, artists who wishes to, let's say, issue a new album can raise funding through the crowdfunding platforms. And Estate Guru operates exactly in real estate-backed loans for property developers or business loans backed with real estate.
Could you talk about more the security for investors, how the loans are backed, and what gives the certainty to investors that their investment really is safe in this scenario?
So in Estate Guru, as I've said, all the loans are backed by the property, and I can talk about how the process of, let's say, publishing the loan is in Estate Guru. So in essence, when we receive an application from the borrower, we running all the background checks, the identification of the borrower. So we check his history, his background, his expertise in either the real estate development or the business he's doing. And also we always request to submit evaluation. And we accept valuation only from the best and known companies in the market. In Latvia, it's Latio, Arco, Newsec, and the companies of the same level. And then our risk committee checks all the data, checks the valuation, checks what is the business plan of the exact project, and only then it can be published. So, and every loan is backed by the property or by the property that is being developed. And what also provides the security is that we are never financing 100% of the costs or 100% of the value of the property. Our historic loan to value is 60%. So if the developers wants to build a house, let's say 1,000 euro per square meter, last year 1,000 euro per square meter, so we are financing from, let's say, 50 to 65% of the costs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and are there any restrictions for the persons who may become the borrowers, or are there any red flags that you avoid if such thing happens in the research process, in the identification process of the client?
Well, say we usually try to avoid, speaking property-wise, we are trying to avoid illiquid projects.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say a piece, a land plot, maybe 100 hectares, 150 kilometers far from Riga, we will not accept because it will be pretty hard to sell such type of the property. And also we check the borrowers. So if he has any red flags in all the registries or systems, so we usually do not accept. So from, say, our experience, from 100 applications we are receiving, only 10% might get to the platform. So our rules are pretty strict, but still we usually try to find a solution. So if the business plan is sound, if the borrower has good experience, so his chances are pretty high to get the financing.
And out of those 10% that do get to the platform, what is the percentage of properties which are residential or commercial or maybe industrial use? If you have such statistics.
It's hard to say the exact statistics. So we need to understand that we have three types of loans. So first type is a development loan, where say the client pledges the land and then starts constructing a multi-apartment house or an office building or a hotel even. So that is one type. Then we have bridge loans, where the financing is used for the purchase of the property. So, for example, in Germany, it's a huge market because if you want to buy a good property, usually you have days to, let's say, provide an offer and maybe a month or less to structure the deal. If you don't have the financing available so fast, you will lose the deal. So that's why the bridge financing, also one of the type of loans that we provide, is very popular in such countries because we can evaluate fast. We don't have, say, very complicated procedures. So we are still a fintech company, so we are automating most of the procedures and we are able to take decisions fast. So let's say in Latvia, usually the credit committee's decision takes from 1 to maximum 3 days if we have all the documents from the borrower. So that's why bridging loans from a state group are very popular. And the third category is business loans. So for example, you need a working capital, maybe you're trading auto parts. So you need a working capital to expand to new market and you have a property to pledge. So that's the third type. So we evaluate both your property that you're pledging and the business. Let's say how sound is your business plan, but financing only against the value of the property. And let's say out of those three, the development loans will be the most popular now, but bridging loans are also growing and business loans as well. Yeah.
I would guess that during the past 2 months, the development loans have shrunk a little bit because of the interesting air in the geopolitical situation.
I would not say no. Say the percentage of the development loans has not decreased because if we start a construction project, so the borrower needs funds every month. So I'd say most of the developers who started construction projects are not stopping them in the middle. So even with the rising construction cost, it does not make sense. It's always much more reasonable to finish the construction, and let's say if you're not able to sell at good prices, you can always rent out and still wait for the selling prices to rise, which they will eventually. So no, I would not say that in the last months the percentage has changed significantly.
And do I understand correctly that developers can raise funding in stages? So for example, in the first stage when they lay some foundation works, and then in a couple of months next stage, and so on and so on. Is there any limit to that, or does it or can it reach the 60% value of the property in all stages combined?
Say yes, we are financing in stages, as in all construction projects you need funds once a month to pay all the contractors or their materials. So we are using the same construction acts which are used by the banks, and before we are starting financing, we agree with the borrower how much of those acts, let's say percentage-wise, we are financing. So if the borrower invested 100,000, paid 100,000 for the construction works, let's say we are financing 60-65. So the value of the property grows, and the let's say total volume of the loans also grows. So, but we always maintain this loan to value, which we are writing in every project.
Could you explain how the Estate Guru platform works? When I went on estateguru.co, I saw that there's primary market and secondary market. Maybe you can explain to listeners what these markets mean and how can investors participate in them?
So Estate Guru, in essence, is a classical crowdfunding platform. So when we receive an application for the loan, we evaluate, then we publish it on the project, let's say on the platform, say 100,000 euro. So that's the primary market. When the project is published the first time, and investor can choose to invest in this project. So they push a button, invest 100 euro or maybe 50 or 10,000. So it depends on each investor. Once the loan is fully invested, we secure the mortgage and transfer funds to the borrower. So at that point, this one stage or one project, when it's financed, it say has ended its life on the primary market. So the loan is funded, transferred to the borrower, and then the borrower pays the interests and the principal as agreed in the terms of the loan. So at that point, investor can choose either he is waiting, let's say 12 months as agreed with the borrower when he should pay back the principal, and he waits, let's say, monthly or for quarterly payments of interests. So most of the investors invest like that. But in case, for example, you want to take your funds out faster, so maybe you have some more interesting investment opportunity, or we have investors with whom we are speaking, they're saying, oh, I need to buy a house, so I need to take the money out faster. So at that point, you can actually sell your loan on the secondary market. So if you invested 50 euro, you can go to secondary market and sell this loan to other investors. And you can choose either you're selling it for 50, 55, or if you, let's say, need money faster, so you want that, let's say, your loan becomes more liquid, so you can sell even below the value of the loan. So,
but you can sell higher, or you can sell higher the demand.
You can always sell higher. So sometimes we see deals happening higher than the issued loan volume. Sometimes we see that the price is lower. So that depends on each investor. So, and we also see that there is a demand for both types of loans. So,
and for example, what happens if a borrower asks for, let's say, 100,000 euros, and after the funding round ends, the total funds that were raised are, let's say, 20,000 euros. Does the borrower get those 20,000 euros, or what happens in that kind of scenario if he cannot raise the critical mass that he needs for development to start, let's say?
So in most cases, looking back, so at which projects we're publishing. So we are trying to publish the projects where we are sure that it will be able to gather full amounts. But always, there are some cases when the full amounts were not gathered. So when you're looking at the project as an investor, you see that there is always a maximum amount and a minimum amount. So sometimes the borrower, he says, okay, let's say 50,000 will be enough for me, but 100,000 is the best case scenario. So if the 50,000 are gathered, then let's say the project is marked as invested and the borrower gets those 50,000. So in case this minimum amount is not gathered, so then the project is cancelled and the funds are returned to investors.
Okay. And who are the developers that are collaborating currently with the Estate Guru and that raise funds for property developments, for example? Can you share any particular success stories?
Well, depending what is a success story. So for me, each project that is finished is a success story. So we have a lot of small developers. We have developers who are building maybe 1, 2, 3 semi-detached houses per year. So and that's their volume. So they're building very beautiful houses or they're renovating apartments. And we also have borrowers who are building, let's say, 100 apartments, 50 apartments. So the range is very big. In Estonia, one of the largest Estonian developers, Andover, is using Estate Guru. So if you want to invest in Andover's project, just wait for them to appear at Estate Guru. So part of their properties are financed at Estate Guru. In Latvia, I think now one of the biggest projects is Rigas Vārti in Salaspils. So it's a big project, 92 apartments. So it will be finished this year.
Mm-hmm. And I know we already touched on this topic a little bit, but I'll ask it once more. If there's any real estate developer listening, what terms should real estate developers take into consideration before applying for a loan? Are there any requirements regarding the deal size, property type, or the location? We understand that, okay, 100, 200 kilometers away from Riga is not interesting for us. Is there any other requirements or criteria that they should follow?
Let's say any developer should understand that we are usually working with the fast projects. So most of our developers and clients can manage to develop a project, let's say, in 18 to maybe 30 months' time. So buy land, do the project, construct, sell. So if you see that in those time constraints you're able to perform, so then sure you can apply. Then you always need to submit evaluation. So say sometimes we can give you a preliminary offer of what could be the terms without valuation. So for example, if you're willing to buy a land in Mežapuķe and build semi-detached house, we can discuss what's the price of the land, what's the budget, what are the sales prices. And given the how hot this market is, so you know how many private houses are being sold around Riga, it's a huge market now. So we know more or less what will be the prices. So we can give you a preliminary offer based on our knowledge and let's say the knowledge of the client. But once we are moving to the platform to actually raise funds, then you'll need the valuation.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you have a good sound project, small or big, let's say the minimum amount is 50,000 euro for the loan we are starting with. And then based on the new crowdfunding regulation, up to 5 million per year for one project is the limit. Yes. So if you're developing, let's say, bigger projects, so maybe your construction time will be 18 months, so it can be 5 plus 5, so 10 million maximum.
Okay, and what returns are investors on the other side expecting from developers? What kind of percentage should they take into consideration when applying to the loan?
So the interest rates will depend on the type of the project. So historically, we have seen the rates as low as 7.5%. For the projects, let's say, in central part of Tallinn or in central part of Riga with a very fast and high liquidity of the property. And we have seen the rates up to 12%, where sometimes, let's say, the construction in Mežapuķe, when the borrower just received the construction permit and he's only starting construction works, so the rate will be higher. So I would say on average, you should count from 8 to 12%, depending on the risk, liquidity, the loan-to-value ratios, and the state of the market. Say, if we're looking at what happens now, for the last 2 months, for the last actually months and a half, we see that investors' rates and have risen 1 to 2%. So But last year we have seen that investors were ready to invest at 8%. So it always depends on the state of the market, of the money market as well.
But consequently, the closer the property is to the center, the potentially lower rates could be asked for.
Lower rates could be asked for if the property is, say, located in very liquid location. The let's say the loan to value ratios. So we have developers who are saying, I have enough equity, I don't want to over leverage. So the developers are taking sometimes even 40% of the costs, 50% of the costs. So the risk is lower. And yes, depending on the type of the borrower, so the returning clients usually get lower rates. Because so we have history and the cooperation history for 3 or with some clients even 5 and 6 years. So during those 5 years, all the projects were finished, paid on time, good track record. So usually these projects can get lower interest because investors on the platform also see the track record of the borrower.
So for investors, there is some kind of a spreadsheet available where they can see which projects have been done by the particular developer, right?
In every project description, you have information about the borrower. So history of the borrower himself, let's say of his experience, if he's a developer, and you also see all of his previous loans.
Okay. And what kind of real estate development projects are the most successful in crowdfunding? Meaning, which ones raise the funds faster? Is there a particular segment that performs better, or it depends on various measures?
I would say it does not depend, especially for crowdfunding. So the first is speed. So the faster the project, the better it performs. But that's obvious for any project. It does not matter whether it's crowdfunding or not. Residential projects obviously have, say, more interest from investors because the liquidity of small apartment is much higher than, let's say, of 1,000 or 5,000 square meter big office building. So the buyers are completely different, but we have both types of those. So.
Okay. And who are the investors in Estate Guru? So let's talk about the other side of this equation. Can anyone become a property financer, or are there some specific restrictions? So, for example, a simple man walking down the street opens up Facebook, sees an ad from Estate Guru. Can he become an investor and invest as little as 50, 100, 200, 400 euros? Or does he also have to have some track record for you to somehow evaluate him?
Say any person registered with the account registered in EU, an EU bank, can become the investor, except the restricted or sanctioned countries. So all the AML's procedures have to be followed. So the investor has to answer and describe the source of funds. So we follow all the local and EU AML and KYC procedures. And then investor can invest starting from 50 euros. So our investors range from 18-year-old students, for example, in Estonia, to very big and experienced investment funds, or even banks. So we have investors of a very large group. So starting from 50 euro and up to several millions.
So there's no ceiling for the investment amount?
No.
Okay. And you already mentioned that investment projects get checked by Estate Guru before they appear on the platform. Can you tell us a bit more how that process goes, and can investor trust fully with this judgment, or does he have to take some measures, like if he would fund the project himself as the private investor, for example?
Every investment bears a risk. So crowdfunding is still, let's say, comparing to bank deposit, it's a pretty risky investment because yes, we do check the borrowers. So we check for obvious red flags, we check for the soundness of the business plan, but problems happen. So in case you would invest in bank deposit, so you have 100,000 protection by the government fund, and the bank actually secures your investment with the balance sheet of the bank, with the assets of the bank, so and the capital. In case of a state guru or any other crowdfunding platform, you have to understand that you are the lender, so you have to also evaluate yourself. So check the valuation, check the descriptions, check what's the project. So yes, we do check, but still the responsibility and the risks is on the lender.
And do investors receive any updates during the construction phase of the development project, for example, of how it is going and whether the goals are being reached?
We do updates for every loan. The updates consist of the payments made on the schedule, if the schedule is being followed. If it's not followed, so what happens, what are we doing to, let's say, collect the funds or persuade the borrower or work with the borrower so he pays on time. And in case of a construction project, so you see that every new stage comes, so you can follow how the property develops as well. So say with every new stage, you'll see either a new valuation, either a construction act, and you will see the photos of what happens. We also post information on what are the current sales. So you can usually see how much, for example, apartments are reserved, how much are sold, etc. So State Guru, one of the core values of a State Guru is transparency. So we try to provide the investors as much information as possible. So you can log into platform and actually go to statistics page and see all the history for starting from 2014. And you can check all the loans, what happens, what are the default rates, how much is repaid, what are the income rates, etc. So on that topic, we are trying to provide as much information as possible.
And what happens in the complete worst case scenario? I don't know if such scenario has appeared yet, but let's say the round has been funded, the developer has received their money, and he runs away, disappears. How does the process of this money back guarantee happen from that point, and has it ever occurred?
That's not a money back guarantee. So we don't have, let's say, some institution guaranteeing that the funds are paid back. So for every loan, there is an underlying security, which is real estate, and this real estate has value. And as I've said, the historical loan to value is around 60%. So in case the default happens, we have all the procedures in place, which are regulated by the agreements and by the laws of the respective country. So we go to court, we get an execution list, we go to auction, and we sell the property. So once the property is sold and State Guru receives funds, State Guru then distributes these funds among the investors. So that's in a very simplistic way. But as you know, the law has a lot of possibilities to, say, make the process longer. So sometimes we are able to collect maybe in 6 months. Sometimes it can drag for 2 years. So
But
Ever.
has there been such scenarios, or
Yes, we do have defaults. I think from 500 million plus we have already financed. The defaults were around 3 to 4%. So the loans which are now in default. So
Yeah.
part of those were already recovered. On the other part, we're working to recover. So defaults do happen. So there is a risk involved, but say the capital loss out of those 500 million financed is 0. I think 1 something percent. So the capital loss historically was minor.
Yeah, and I think now I understand why you do such a scrupulous research for the projects beforehand, so that there's no, mm, so that there's less of these processes afterwards if the project goes
Well,
to
every
default.
collection is a hard process, so it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of time, and let's say we value the trust of our investors. So this business, let's say for the last 8 years, the trust and transparency are the most important factors. So that's why we are not forgetting about defaulted loans. So we have whole team working constantly on recoveries. So some are more successful, some are less, but every loan is followed, and yeah, we work on every loan that's in default.
And which countries are represented by the investors the most? Like, which are the biggest pipelines as of those that you named in the beginning?
Estonians present a very large amount of investors. That's because historically the company was founded in Estonia, and Estonians are also very active in all sectors of investments comparing to other Baltic countries. Then the Germany is also very active, and I would say Lithuania. So if we compare Latvia investments to Estonia or Lithuania, they are much smaller, and both the volume-wise and quantity-wise. But that's not only for Estate Guru. So that's the overall situation in the market. So if you check the stock market investments done by all 3 countries, the Latvian investors will be the lower amount. And yeah, that's the hard topic in our country.
Yeah, and why should the other investors choose Estate Guru over other crowdfunding platforms? What makes you special or unique in this market?
Well, it's a hard question. So there are good crowdfunding platforms. Let's say there are good crowdfunding platforms for different type of investments. There are good equity platforms, but the equity investments bear much higher risk. So the only security you have are the stocks of the company. So the stocks can go from, say, 100 to 0 very fast. So it's a much riskier loans. Then you have the P2P, so loans for, say, car loans. So also a lot of good platforms, but also a different market. Why Estate Guru is good? Because we only issue for the loans secured with the real estate. And comparing between the European platforms for real estate backed loans, we are one of the biggest platforms with the very good track record. So, and our track record and the history of the platform and the people behind the platform shows why we are good.
Do you have any other message for this generation of real estate professionals and market movers in Baltic states?
Yeah, be more active, take more risks, look at what happens. If you're from Latvia, look at what happens in Tallinn or in Vilnius. So be bold and start more projects. So if you're an investor, as I always say, the sooner you start investing, the better. So does not matter, is it the crowdfunding platform, is it a State Guru or any other platform, or it's a stock market, just start investing as soon as, say, you're able to, which is in a lot of tools from 18 years old. Just start investing, because that's the capital which will build your financial future.
Okay, and where can people find you?
Log in to www.estateguru.co.
Okay. I appreciate this conversation, Aleksandr. Thank you for sharing your time with me and Baltic Landlords. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.